Okay, thank you very much, and welcome elected members, officers and press, if there are any, to today's full council meeting. So the meeting is being filmed for live or subsequent broadcast via the council's internet site. I need to point that out to you, but you have a notification within your papers anyway, and that the meeting is a hybrid meeting. So a wee bit of patience when we're trying to connect folk who are working from home or work. So before I go on to the main items of business, it's going to be one of those days, isn't it? Okay. I just want to let you know that the Spatial Gaelic Choir will be coming in to sing for you in anticipation of the mods coming to Paisley in a couple of weeks. And if any of you don't know what that is, the Spatial is an organisation, an arts organisation that promotes interest, education and participation in traditional arts and Gaelic culture across Renfrewshire, and it was formed after or just before the last mod came to Paisley in 2013. So we've got the choir coming in at 11:15 approximately, 11:15 or thereabouts, and then they're going to perform, I think, at around about 12ish at the atrium on the bridge, if any staff members want to come and listen to them. Janice, thank you. You have been a great support in this mod coming to Paisley as part of the steering group. And I know you've put in an awful lot of work, probably a lot more than I have at this point. I want to thank you for your input. You know, it's a great job you've done. Lillian Belshaw, now she's not attending the meeting, but she's listening at home because she's a council geek. She is leaving and she is retiring. I don't think she'll retire though. And I think her official date is December, end of December. But she's listening from home today. And she's been with the council a long, long time. I mean, Mark has just told me that she was here when the Flintstones Scottish relatives were running around. So I think she's been here since she was about 5 years old. But I think most of us know Lillian. Some of us have known her for a long time. She was here when some of us started and has been an immense support. I can talk for myself. She's been an immense support. And if you ever wanted to know anything about the council, then you just ask Lillian, don't you? Because she knows everything about it. So I just want to say, you know, Lillian, you're going to be sadly missed here, and we wish you well in your retirement, whatever you choose to do. And thank you for your service to the council for all these years. And I know that a couple of the councillors want to come in and say something nice about you. So I'm going to ask Councillor Ian McMillan to come in.
Thanks, Provost. I wasn't aware that Lillian was leaving. Unfortunately, I've not seen Lillian much since I came back into council. Now, the new way of working, certainly get plenty of emails from her telling me what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing. But I must admit, I've enjoyed working with Lillian over the years. And as you say, Provost, there was little that she didn't know about the council. She really was an expert. I wouldn't go as far as calling her a geek like you, but you know, she did know an awful lot. Very professional in her manner, but a very, very nice person, and she will be missed. I don't know who's going to replace her, but they've got I don't know. I do know who's going to replace her, but he has got he's got big shoes to fill. But enjoy your retirement, Lillian.
Thank you very much, Ian. Councillor Ian Nicholson.
Thanks, Provost. Similar to Councillor McMillan, I remember Lillian being a long-standing member of the council. I don't mean that as an official capacity in the sense of a councillor, but part of the corporate team. And as I say, she was always there to provide advice and steer us in the right direction of, as Councillor McMillan says, what we can and can't do with regards to administrative support. So I say I wish her well in her retirement. As I say, I think it's I didn't, like Councillor McMillan myself, I didn't know she was retiring, so it's a loss to the council. But as I say, I wish her well in her retirement, as I say, and I thank her and appreciate all the help and support from her over the years. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nicholson. Yeah, she's been a great support. What she's had to put up with from us, I don't even dare to guess. So I'm sure that she's earned this very well. So good luck, Lillian, whatever you do. Oh, Councillor Doig, sorry. Andy.
Thanks, Provost. I mean, I've known Lillian since I got elected 11 years ago, and I think she's steadied the civic ship through many turbulent periods in Renfrewshire, and I think everybody in the chamber, and certainly myself and the other independent councillors, wish her best for the future. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Doig. Okay, so we'll move on. Do we have any apologies? Councillor Grady. Okay, can we declare interest? Councillor Sam Nolan. Climate with NHS. Okay. Councillor Neil Graham.
Thanks, Provost. Connection to item 6 and 7. I'm a non-financial connection as a volunteer for Bernardo's, but none of the work I do is inside Renfrewshire, and I'll be participating in the items. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Caroline Davidson.
Yeah, just sorry, put this one off. Sorry, excuse me. Okay, that's better. Just a connection with item 6. My daughter was in March this year was moved to Brocken from Arkelston, so it's no fitting. It's just a connection.
Okay, and Councillor Michelle Campbell.
Thank you, Provost. It's similar to what's been said before. Item 6 and 7, I've got to declare a connection. I work within NHS GGNC, but not in this HACP, so I will be staying and participating. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Campbell. I have no other hands up. No? Okay. As I said before, if you remember during the meeting, please let me know right away if you discover you've got an interest in anything as we come to each item. I'm happy to take them from you at that point also. Okay, move on to the minutes of the council boards and panels. Do we have any comments? No? Okay, we agree. Okay, Provost update. I'm sorry, but I'm still to send it today, which I'll do sometime today. I know it was a recess and I hope you're all nice and refreshed, but it wasn't a recess for me. I was still busy. So you'll be able to read all about it later tonight. I'm sure you're looking forward to it. That's just for noting. And item 3, the update on the annual audit report. Alistair, do you want to come in and... All right, okay, okay. Do we have any questions for Alistair? No? Okay, we agree the report. Financial update. Any questions? Councillor Eddie Devine.
I've got several questions if I could ask Alistair. If you could go to page 13. And it's bullet point 1.2 and 1.4. I wonder if you could explain in better terms just the finances that remains challenging and broadly consistent with the position. Could you bring us up to date with what you're meaning? That's in 1.4, sorry. If I could ask you 1.3, well, the potential additional flexibility councils may have in terms of revenue grant allocation in the future, the framework in itself is unlikely to substantially improve and the current fraught financial position of local government. If I could take you to page 14 and bullet point 3.3. And it's that paragraph and it says, however, given the significant level of savings already generated by the council over the past decade, it is increasingly difficult to implement savings which will not impact on service delivery. I'd like an explanation of what you mean by that. Page 15, 3.4. We're looking at somewhere between 30 and 50 million pound. And you're assuming I don't know if you're assuming that off your own back or you've been told this, a 5% uplift in council tax in each year, which will be 15% over the 3 years at least, and in the 0.37 at the bottom of that page. And it's one of the paragraphs, and it says, in such circumstances, the council, I'll read the whole thing if you want, but it says, in such circumstances, the council moved to a position of being financially unsustainable. Could you enlarge on that, Alistair, please? No, sorry.
No, I think that's sufficient to be getting on with. Thanks, Councillor Devine. Okay, you've asked a number of points. I suppose what I'm seeking to try and do in this report is provide an update. Broadly speaking, the report to Council in June, which was probably a fuller report than this report that we have in front of us today. What I'm outlining in this report is that the position hasn't changed significantly from the position that was previously reported in June, and to be fair, what has been reported to Council over the past number of months. The medium to longer term picture is still looking quite challenging in terms of the position for local government generally, and I'm making that point. You know, the Renfrewshire Council is not alone in the financial challenges that it is facing. These are financial challenges that are being faced across the whole of local government in Scotland. I am conscious that some of the messaging in here is quite difficult for the council, and the requirement for the council to make decisions around about its financial position, that fundamental core financial position, as I've outlined in the report, has not changed significantly from what has been reported to Council previously. To take your points in turn, you had mentioned first of all in paragraph 1.3 the Verity House agreement. So as part of that agreement between COSLA and the Scottish Government, there is a fiscal framework that has been developed, and essentially that is seeking to provide councils with or reach an understanding between the Scottish Government and local government on how funding can potentially be utilised. You know, it will not be a surprise to members that there has been over the past decade, you know, a view from local government certainly that there has been an increase in the way that spend has been directed by the Scottish Government, and the fiscal framework is seeking to address that position and provide additional flexibility to local government and how it uses the resources that it has. But that doesn't address the core issue of the quantum of funding that has been passed to local government. So that is what I mean by that paragraph. So, but while efforts to increase the flexibility in how councils can use the resources that they've got is welcome, the core issue of the quantum of funding available is not going to be resolved by the agreement of a fiscal framework. You had mentioned as well in paragraph 3.3 around, and I have used the word fraught, I think, and in paragraph 1.1, as I've explained, that is my view on what the longer term outlook for local government finances still is, and that, as I said, the council will still require to take decisions around about its core spending in order to bring that back in line with what I'm anticipating the funding to be available to be. You'd also asked about council tax and the 5% figure that's in there. That is my core operating assumption in terms of the medium-term financial position. It's not obviously an agreed position. That's not for me to decide. That's for elected members to decide. But my core assumption is that council tax at that level is going to be required in order to to mitigate some of the cost pressures that the council is facing. Now, obviously, if members decide not to increase to that level, then that is obviously it simply increases the financial gap that the council is facing over the medium term. Hopefully, I think Councillor Devine, that is all your points. But if I've missed any, please let me know.
Eddie?
Could I ask you to, if I ask you to go to page 16 and clarify the last sentence? It says, it is highly unlikely that savings at this scale can be delivered without the council reprioritising spend, impacting on the ability to deliver all current service levels in this current form, breadth or scale. That means cuts.
Well, I think Councillor Devine, it means that the council has been taking savings, efficiency savings, for a long period of time. And much of the savings that now, no saving is easy to take, but we have had a long period of taking savings out of a range of services and areas across the council over the past decade. And the longer that period goes on in terms of that challenging financial position, then those savings decisions are going to, in my view, I think inevitably potentially impact on the services that the council is able to deliver, because we have been on such a journey over the past 10 years, slightly more than 10 years, of generating savings where we have tried to protect as far as possible the delivery of frontline and really key services and priority services for the council, and that is becoming increasingly challenging for the council to do. I'm just making that point.
Okay, Eddie. Happy with that explanation?
Well, Alistair's given me an explanation, and I can hear what you're saying in code, and I realise it is difficult for us, this council, and this is the council I'm interested in. So thanks very much, Alistair, for being as honest as you possibly can be. And I know 5% is a guess, but we'll see what happens.
Okay. Councillor Anne Dowling.
Thank you, Provost. I'd like to thank officers for this report, which does make sober reading and tells us that the council financial outlook is still at severe risk, as Alistair has reiterated there. Proposals are being developed to identify savings, and the words that are being used are to expect service reductions in scope and design. The Strathclyde Pension Fund surplus will give this council some additional revenue due to our reduced employer contributions. However, as council's projected financial gap of around 35 million, inflationary pressures and costs are still an issue, with the potential for increased borrowing costs on capital investments, while interest rates are projected to increase. So we're now looking at Strathclyde pension contribution rates to help save council services, money that could have remained in the pension pot for low-paid workers, or used to help the people of Renfrewshire during a severe cost of living crisis. Instead, Provost, it's going to bail out the mistakes, corruption and gross incompetence of a Tory government that has driven inflation through the roof and wrecked public finances. Pension money will be used to bail out an SNP government that has eviscerated council finances to fund its own incompetence, arrogance and failed projects, from unsaleable ferries to failed recycling to stalled universal free school dinners. And on top of that, this council now has the financial burden of the Dargaville debacle, which every woman, man and child will pay for in Renfrewshire for generations to come. So my questions to the officer, which I'm sure there will be a theme that will be developed in light of his report, are: what are the timescales for presenting cost-saving proposals to elected members? In other words, what services are you proposing to cut and when are you going to do it? And clearly this isn't a direct question to Alistair. This is on behalf of the administration's plan, because at the end of the day, elected members make these decisions. My other question is, what are the financial details underpinning the short-term reduction in the council's pension contributions? We know the percentages that are mentioned in the report. I want to know the figures. And my final question is in regards to the revenue costs associated with the Dargaville borrowing being incorporated into the council's medium to longer term financial planning arrangements. What is the scope and scale of the potential revenue costs of Dargaville? In other words, how much extra will this cost the people of Renfrewshire? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ann Dowling, there were quite a lot of questions in there. I'm not sure that Alistair can give you all of that information, particularly the one with the figures in. He might need to get back to you on that, I'm not sure, but I'm sure he'll do his best. Alistair.
Thanks, Councillor Ann Dowling. I think first of all, it's important just to clarify the position with regards the employer's pension contributions. That position is not a council decision. So every member of Strathclyde Pension Fund has gone through a revaluation process. This is something that happens in a 3-yearly cycle. And in terms of that, they will, as part of that triennial revaluation, they will have an independent firm of actuaries who will come in and assess the potential future liabilities of the fund and assess that against the level of assets that they have under investment. Now, as I've outlined in the report, the actuaries' assessment is that the fund is currently in a very positive position. It is very well funded, and that allows the opportunity for every member of the main employer group within Strathclyde Pension Fund to reduce its employer pension contributions down to a longer term level of 17.5% over the longer term. So the council is currently paying an employer contribution for every member of staff who's also a member of the pension fund. The council makes a contribution of 19.3%. So in the longer term, the actuary's assessment is that we can reduce that contribution, which is a benefit to the council. It in no way impacts on pension entitlements. If I can just give that assurance, so people's entitlement to pension, there is no change in conditions there. But because of the very well funded position and then the investment performance that the fund has managed to achieve over the past number of years, it provides a headroom for employers to reduce that contribution. So just to be clear on that point, it is not a council decision to reduce contributions. We are not somehow extracting money from the pension fund. That's not what's happening here. All that is happening is that an independent assessment has been made, is that future contributions can be reduced because of the level of funding that is already within the fund. So hopefully that clarifies that point. Just a number of other points around the kind of timescales and services that are being proposed to be cut. I mean, that's obviously, there will be, in terms of that medium-term position, the council officers will need to make an assessment about what potential areas that savings could potentially be delivered from, and that would need to be agreed by members. That is not a decision that council officers can make by themselves, and that process is ongoing. And obviously, when the council comes to setting its budget, and for the next financial year, next March, there will be a number of options that council members will need to take decisions on at that point. I suppose in terms of the timescales, what I'm outlining here is that over that medium-term position, the position is still going to be challenging. The benefit that we'll get from reduced employer contributions is absolutely, it is very helpful to our position. But what I'm stressing to members is that the council's core financial position, what we are spending compared to what we are going to be getting in income over the long term, we still have a recurring gap there. The council's core financial position still has a gap in it. We can use the benefit of reduced employer contributions to help mitigate that process or mitigate that position. but it is not a permanent solution. So the council will still need to take, in my view, some quite difficult decisions in order to ensure that its recurring financial position remains in balance.
Thank you for that response, and I think you did your best under the circumstances to give your responses. I don't think I got the answers I was looking for, but I'm not blaming you for that. I think you've done your best in the context of today's meeting. I do understand the background to the Strathclyde Pension Fund surplus decision. I know it's not the council here that's made that decision. The point I was making is that given we are in the midst of a severe cost of living crisis, at the same time that we've got the ability to use a surplus to address that, we are going to have to use it more likely to reduce service cuts. And while I completely appreciate the very well made warning to elected members that you have delivered consistently, that we have too much money going out and not enough coming in issue, I think the fact that we have undertaken significant cost and efficiency savings over a 10-year period, closely tied to the parallel reduction and real term cuts to our funding from the Scottish Government, there's no fat left to trim. We're now looking at not the nice extras, but core service delivery potentially. And it seems to Renfrewshire Labour that the only way we're going to get out of that hole in the next couple of years is by using the pension contribution surplus. What a terrible situation to be in. I thank you for your answers. I have no doubt we will come back to it. Final point that I'd like to make is, though, while it is the administration's responsibility to present recommendations to elected members and what kind of further savings we can undertake, we have been having these conversations for the best part of 2 years now. We are long overdue the time when we should be looking at some costed proposals, because we have to take these proposals back to our constituencies. We have to speak to our wards, our community councils, our voluntary groups, all of the stakeholders that could potentially be affected by the service cuts and the reduction in scale of what we can do as a council. We need to start having these conversations. So it would be very useful and helpful if we could start putting some more detail to that so that we could consider what's on the horizon. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James McLaren.
Thank you, Provost. I just have a couple of questions to ask. Paragraph 3.1 talks about an anticipated parking charge income shortfall. Now I'm aware that Paisley First is pushing for a continuation of the free for three in the town. I'm just wondering if that's what's being referred to there. And in 5.2, it's good to see that the new Dargable Primary School gets a mention and the extension to Parkmains High School. Can you tell me, please, the primary school in Dargable, 45 million, does that include a 3G or 4G pitch for the new primary school, please?
Alistair.
Thanks, Councillor McLaren. Just taking your point on parking, the council has been carrying an under recovery on parking income for a number of years. That started probably pre-pandemic, but certainly over the pandemic period, was exacerbated quite significantly. And obviously the council has made some policy choices in terms of pilots around about the three for free. These kind of issues combined have resulted in a position where the council is carrying an under recovery in its income budgets on parking income of around about £1 million a year. So the council has been managing that position over the past number of years, but it's obviously another issue that is layering into the council's financial difficulties and the challenges that will need to be addressed over the medium term. On Dargable School, yeah, my £45 million estimate does include a provision at the moment for not sure if it's 3G or 4G. I'm not sure what G we're at in terms of pitch surfaces these days. But it does include provision for an artificial surface pitch at the school. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Nicholson.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Provost.
Ian Nicholson.
Thanks, Provost. Councillor Ann Dowland's comments, I'm taking them as to be Labour are annoyed that we've got a reduced contribution towards a pension fund which helps this council's finances. They seem to be annoyed about that. They seem to be annoyed that we've provided a Dargable Primary School. You know, they seem to be annoyed about that fact that we've managed to provide a school like we would do if that happened in any community within Renfrewshire. They seem to be annoyed about that fact that we've provided them with a school. You know, and they seem to be annoyed about the fact we haven't slashed services to their obviously political benefit. That seems to be the position here. They want to know that they're annoyed about all these kind of positive things that this council has managed to do in the face of one of the tightest financial constraints we've ever experienced since 2008. They're annoyed about it. They can't actually celebrate the fact that we're working our way through all this. We're trying our best to serve the people of Renfrewshire. They're annoyed about it. And I take the point that's been raised as well about the council tax. Their council tax proposition last year was 5%. You know, it was like 1.5% or 1% less than ours. So let's get away from this whole idea that we have to face up to financial realities here. And they don't seem to appreciate or understand how the budgets work either. If you've got proposals that are different, you will have the same information as us. You'll be able to make your same choices and your same decisions come the budget time. That's how this council works. You seem to want budgets in the middle of summer or the middle of June or the middle of July. And I mean, I know there's an election coming up, and I know there's a bit of grandstand going on here as well, but the hypocrisy coming out of here is absolutely amazing. You talk about the burden put onto the people of Renfrewshire about Dargable Primary School. That's a burden we have to carry because an error happened in this council. We have to resolve it. We inherited that burden. Since 2009, that burden was bolted into that whole process. And that also covered the Labour administration. I'd like you to remember that as well. But let's go on to the key point here. Councillor Ann Dowland says, oh, there's too much money going out of this council. She's absolutely correct. Know how? £305 million for Labour Party's PFI schools. We're funding. So every high school. So if you want to go down that road about talking about the burden of Dargable Primary School on the people of Renfrewshire, we'll remind the people of Renfrewshire about the burden of your PFI scheme, which I was there at the time as an elected member. We opposed that, the SNP, within the council. We opposed those proposals. We knew it was a millstone round our necks. We knew that was going to cripple the finances of the council for not just 20 years, but 35, 40 years. We knew that was going to happen. And yet it remains not plastered upon a Labour leaflet anywhere, not remembered from the Labour Party about how a wonderful project that was going to be. £305 million walking out the door of this council's budgets, paying for a private finance initiative. We warned you about it, so don't come along here with your hypocrisy about the cost of a small primary school which needs to be built for the people of Dargable, and you appear annoyed about it. We await your budget proposals next year. You'll be working to the same information we have. The officer's report is what it is. That's their opinion and their view at this particular time. So we await for that. And please, tone down the hypocrisy here. You won't get away with it. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Graham Clark.
Thank you, Provost. And thank you, Councillor Nicholson, for putting words into our mouth, which we didn't say. I note today that SNP can't afford to pay for its projects, which is promised, because they don't have enough money. I note also that they've taken a lot of private money themselves recently, PFI money, and that's cost us as Scottish citizens a lot more money than we had to do. What we're concerned about as Labour is that we plan ahead, that we look at our finances, that we take this situation seriously, and that indeed that we don't just budget on an annual basis, but that we have a plan for the next few years, not just for this coming year. So we're annoyed that there isn't any proposal for saving the council the money which we haven't got. That's what we're annoyed about, not all these other things that Councillor Nicholson seems to think we are.
Okay, we have no other hands up. So can I just ask you to note, yeah, sorry, yeah, note the report. Note the report. I know. Okay, report noted. Next item on the agenda is item 5, which is a statutory review of polling places and polling districts. Do we have any questions or comments? Yes, we do. Councillor Andy Doig.
Convener, Provost, in the report, I understand it's difficult about polling places. There's been some, for example, church closures that have necessitated a change in venue, but for years the council as a whole, and that goes back over different administrations, have tried to move away from using primary schools as polling venues. And unfortunately, because of the situation now, there's been a kind of reversing in this report to using primary schools. It's just a plea to say, can we try, if possible, not to do that because of the disruption it causes to the pupils and to families? Thanks.
Okay, Andy. Councillor Audrey Doig.
Thank you, Provost. Basically, to reiterate what Councillor Andy Doig has said, for years I fought to get Our Lady of Peace not a polling station, and that's why we started using the church across the road. And unfortunately, the church has basically gone into bad times. They're basically not got a minister and they're not functioning like they normally did back, and that's why we're having to move back. But I do hope that the officers in the meantime are looking for somewhere else in Linwood apart from a primary school. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doig. Councillor James McLaren, sorry.
Thank you, Provost. A similar vein, Ward 11, NN17 is going to be using Dargable Primary School. Disappointing to see this, as has already been said. It means parents will have to take a holiday to look after their children. It just goes to show how little there is in community facilities that are being built in Dargable and Bishopton, and other premises cannot be found for this. It's harks back to the watering down of the Section 75 agreement, strikes again, in other words. If we can do something about that, that would be good. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I know that it has been, we have endeavoured to stay away from primary schools wherever possible. I'm not sure what is in the Lochwinnoch area in way of churches or other community buildings. I'm going to bring Mark in.
Thank you, Provost. I can confirm to elected members that the practice on doing these reviews for the last, this is the third review that I've been involved in, has been where possible to avoid the use of schools. A couple of observations that I would make on the general point. The first is that obviously we're now in a position where there are no European elections. So we are now looking at a cycle which covers 3 elections in a 5-year period, subject obviously to what's decided at UK Parliament. 2 of those elections, the dates are known, and we have asked colleagues in Children's Services to try and ensure that the dates of the Scottish Parliament elections and the local government elections are in service days going forward. Which would mean there would be no impact arising from school usage for polling places for the children that attend those schools, with the knock-on effect to parents. That then leaves 1 election in a 5-year cycle, which is the UK Parliament elections. With the ending of the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, we don't know when the dates of those elections will be. They are very much at the discretion of the Prime Minister as to the day as to when the election will be, and therefore on that basis it can't be dealt with on the basis of in-service days, because we'll only get roughly 6 weeks notice as to the date of any election. On the specific points that have been raised in relation to the locations, the church in Linwood was on the previous polling plan. However, for the last, I think it's 3 elections, it was not available and therefore couldn't be used. I think initially we were in the high school and then we moved to the primary school. We have looked in the area and not been able to locate any alternatives. Now, if any elected member or member of the public as part of the consultation process wishes to suggest somewhere else for us to assess, we'll be delighted to go and do that. But that's the reason why we've returned to the primary school there. The other option would be to move all of the voting in Linwood to the Tweedy Hall, but standing where the Tweedy Hall is located, that's not great for a town the size of Linwood, and that's why that particular school is still used. On the question of Dargaville, previously voters in Dargaville Village were voting at Bishopton Community Centre, and then I think at one election we, because of the growth and the size of the area and the number of voters involved, we had to bring a second polling place into play, and that was the Scout Hall in Bishopton. But that basically means that the voters were all being asked to head into Bishopton Village rather than being able to vote within Dargaville. In terms of Dargaville itself, the only building which is currently available, which provides sufficient size and scope for a polling place in the area, is the primary school, and that's why it's used. Again, if there are any alternative suggestions, I'd be happy to look at it, but striking the balance between the polling place being within reasonable travelling distance for most voters, the primary school is the current option. As with any of the proposals that are currently on the report, we will look at anywhere that is suggested by any elected member or member of the public. Yeah, the other matter that Dave's just raising with me is that there are, in some cases, situations where even where schools are used, the school building remains open. That's something that I'd be happy to look at in relation to Dargaville and Our Lady of Peace as well. I'm not sure to what extent that would work in Linwood, but it may well work in Dargaville. As an example, McGuire and John Bosco Primary School in Erskine, when it's used as a polling place, the school still remains open to pupils because of how the setup in the building works. We are able to do both things at the same time. The only other matter that I want to raise with elected members is to repeat a comment I made at the last meeting. Unfortunately, we still don't have a decision from the Privy Council as to whether the UK parliamentary boundaries are changing. The last indication that I had received in that was that there was a hope the decision would be made in October, and it may well be therefore that there will be minor changes suggested to the polling districts when the report comes back for final approval in December. It's very unlikely that I'll be suggesting any changes to where voters vote, but it may mean that we have to create a small number of new polling districts to accommodate the revised boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, it would certainly be helpful if we can look at some way that the school can be used both as well as continuing schooling and voting as well in part of the school. I think it's probably unlikely, but in Dargaville, we've got the primary school, the Early Learning Centre and the new health centre, but there's no other public buildings that we can use in Dargaville, which is a shame. Thank you.
Sorry, my mic's. Mark's just said that they're going to try and look at Dargaville to see if they can operate Dargaville as a polling station while the children are at school. There's a possibility they might be able to do that. So I'm sure you'll hear about that in due course. Okay, can we note the report, please? Item 6 is a Chief Social Work Officer report. I have declarations of interest from Fiona Airlie Nicholson. The declaration is a connection. She works for Colliers, who provide services and care. And from Colin McCulloch, his wife works for Colliers, but out with Renfrewshire. So both can remain in the room. Councillor Ian McMillan.
Sorry for not saying this at the beginning, but I have a connection with quarries as well, given my daughter works for them.
Okay. Councillor Ian Nicholson.
Provost, similar, I have a connection that my wife works for Quarries.
Okay.
Happily reminded there a minute ago.
Warriors are very lucky. Okay, thank you, everyone. As I said before, it does, as long as you get the declarations of interest to me, I don't mind if you forget. We all slip up sometimes. Okay, so we are on the Chief Social Work Officer report. John Traynor. John.
Thanks, Provost, and thanks, members, for the opportunity to speak briefly to this report. With a number of declarations, it's clear that there are many members in the chamber who understand fully the social work and social care world. The Chief Social Work Officer role, though, is a statutory role that the council is required to appoint to, and my role in terms of the Chief Social Work Officer role is to provide professional advice to the corporate management team, to the Health and Social Care Partnership and 2 elected members. So it's not an operational role, it's an advisory role in that sense. The annual report, Provost, tries to cover a bit about what I do in that role, but also acknowledges the work of the social work and social care workforce, because without that we wouldn't have a service. It doesn't cover all of the work. That would take hours and not minutes to try and describe. So I'm happy to answer questions if people think there are things missing. I suppose that I just want to again set the structures that we have in Renfrewshire. So children and justice social work remain located within the local authority and the Children's Services Directorate, and our adult social work and social care services are delegated to the Integrated Joint Board. That provides a bit of complexity in Renfrewshire that's not replicated in the other 5 local authorities which make up Greater Glasgow and Clyde. But I think it's the right model for Renfrewshire. But it does mean that as the professional advisor to the Health and Social Care Partnership, I require to fight my way in, but I have to say it's an easy fight in from Christine Lafferty and her team. They are incredibly accommodating and they seek the advice from myself as Chief Social Work Officer on a regular basis, and they keep me up to date with any plans and proposals which impact on the services for adults in our area, and they are open to challenge where I think that needs to be placed. So although I use the term fight, it's actually an easy in. Significant part of the Chief Social Worker role, an increasing part, is around the partnership working, and the report on page 46 details some of that work, but it's usually in relation to the protection agenda. So it's the Adult Protection Committee, the Child Protection Committee, the Gender-Based Violence Group and the Justice Planning and the Alcohol and Drug Partnership. So a range of complexity there, which means that I spend a bit of time in meetings. I sometimes wonder if they're productive, as they could be. So we are spending at the moment a bit of time to review how frequently those meetings work, how they operate, and can we make them more efficient so that we spend more time delivering services. In addition to the formal meeting structures, there are a number of partnership where some services are delivered. And I'm not talking about the purchased services, but those services where we actually work in active partnerships. So Barnardo's Scotland, we work actively with Barnardo's, and I'll mention that a bit later. We work actively with Engage Renfrewshire, particularly around family support. We work with Action for Children, and as a number of members declared, Quarriers are another active partner. One of the things that I've included in the council report this year is the duty of candour. We have a separate process for reporting duty of candour, but actually, because it's a role that sits with the Chief Social Work Officer, I've included it in the report for the first time this year. Duty of candour is a responsibility, a legal responsibility, where if something goes wrong because of our action or inaction, then we are required to look at how we ensure the regret is expressed to the people who suffer, and that we explain to them action that's taken to address that. Members can be assured, though, in the 12 months covered by this report, there were no incidents which actually merited a report under duty of candour, and that indicates that our services continue to be safe. The report this year highlights a fair amount of information in relation to inspection and regulation, and that's increased over the past couple of years because of the recovery and reactivation of the care inspectorate's inspection model. So in the year covered by this report, 7 of our services were inspected by the care inspectorate. We had positive inspections in relation to 5 of those services. We had very good inspections in relation to 2 of our children's houses and 2 of our adult care homes. We had a good inspection in relation to the foster care service. We had poorer inspections in relation to care at home service and 1 of our children's houses. Those inspections were all reported to the relevant boards, and in relation to the 2 poor inspections, immediate action was taken to address the areas of concern expressed by the care inspectorate. The report details the activities of the social work workforce, particularly in adult services, childcare services and in justice. And I suppose just a quick summary, in each of those 3 distinct areas of the profession, we are seeing continued growth and demand on services. In the adult services, particularly around adult support and protection, but also mental health interventions. And we have a challenge in terms of the number of mental health officers that we have, and that's replicated across Scotland. We still discharge our responsibilities, but a challenging time in relation to both the adult protection and the mental health service. In children's services, we've seen significant demand pressures over the period where people have said COVID's finished. Well, actually, it's not. For our most vulnerable families, the demands from COVID and the impact of COVID on family relationships remains significant and has been an added pressure, which, when coupled with the cost of living crisis, is showing significant demands to social work. We have introduced in the period covered this report, and I'll explain further in next year's report, expanded a partnership with Bernardo's to deliver earlier help to families to try and reduce some of that demand, and we're seeing some positive outcomes from that. The courts in the justice world are becoming more efficient again in terms of getting the business through, and that has put a demand on our justice services. There is a pressure to ensure that only those who require to be in custody, the most dangerous of offenders, actually are placed in custody. So we are looking at developing our diversion from prosecution and the nature of our interventions through community payback order and unpaid work. And again, we are seeing some pressures there, but again, we're managing them within the current workforce. I want to say we're managing within the current workforce. The last 12 months has probably been the most challenging that I've found in my lengthy career as a social worker around recruitment and retention. We've had a number of retirees, and the number of qualified workers coming through the training courses at university are not where we would want. So across Scotland, we are seeing significant pressures for qualified workers. We have experienced vacancy levels at times up to 25%, which is really significant, and you can imagine the additional pressure that places on the staff who remain. And that's not just in the qualified workforce, it's in the social care workforce, those professional staff who do the hands-on care, physical care of our most vulnerable, particular adults. And again, we've tried a number of things to recruit effectively to that, including at the last IJB, we talked about international recruitment to try and get the workforce back to where we want. It's a national crisis. I work closely with the Chief Social Work Advisor, Iona Colvin, to look at what we can do. We are exploring some initiatives, the potential of introducing a fast-track scheme to accelerate people with a first degree through to qualified social work standard, and also looking at how do we encourage children and young people who are leaving school to think about the care pathway, which could include coming in as a social care worker and then progressing on to become a qualified social worker. And whilst I'm saying we are experiencing challenges, actually Renfrewshire is still seen as a positive place to work. We get almost every student who comes here on placement applies to remain with us, and that's not replicated across the country. So whilst there are demands on us, we are managing to get workers back in place. It does have a challenge though, because those workers who are coming in are newly qualified and not experienced. That places a significant demand on the support available to that workforce from our first line managers and from their more experienced colleagues. And Renfrewshire actually, in the 12 months of this report, developed a new support programme for newly qualified workers, and it was highlighted as good practice at the University of the West of Scotland and at the Glasgow Caledonian staff fairs as being one of the best newly qualified support programmes in Scotland. The report, paragraph 6.4, highlights some areas of priority for the current 12 months that we're operating within. And I suppose I just want to highlight two. One is the National Care Service discussions and attempting to influence and shape that. That will have significant impact for us as a profession and for our local residents as we go forward. So we will attempt to ensure that the National Care Service delivers for local people. And it delivers what the government's ambition about more effective control for individuals who are using care will ensure that's delivered. I want to talk about a wee shift in emphasis. Over the last couple of years, we've talked about keeping the promise. We actually now want to change the language there to delivering the promise. The pandemic, the promise was launched in February 2020, and in March 2020 we went into lockdown. That did impact on how the promise has been delivered. It was a 10-year programme. We're now in year 3, we're going into year 4, and we need to accelerate delivering that. So we're changing the focus locally to delivering the promise. As Chief Social Work Officer, I mentioned my role to support provide advice to the Chief Exec and the corporate management team to use elected members, to Christine Lafferty and her team in the Health and Social Care Partnership. And I wanted to just acknowledge the support I get from folk to discharge this role. It's effective, it's challenging, and I wouldn't be able to do that without the support of the senior officers. But most importantly, I wouldn't be able to do this job without the frontline workers. So just an acknowledgement to the social workers and social care staff in Renfrewshire, and that includes our colleagues in the third and independent sector. They do work in challenging times, as we all know, but they do work to the highest standards that they're possible to deliver, and I remain assured that we do deliver good quality services. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you very much, John. I always look forward to your yearly report. I always learn something, I really do. And once again, it's been informative and very helpful. Does anyone have any questions for John? Councillor McMillan?
Thanks very much, Provost. As ever, a very comprehensive report. I'm fortunate enough to deal with John in a kind of regular basis through my role in the IJB and the various boards I'm on, which are all seem to be connected in some way to social work. So, you know, I've got a reasonable knowledge of what's going on. Very, very difficult times to work in social work, as we all know. You know, coming out of the pandemic, you know, I hate saying that, but it's true. The cost of living crisis is still very, very much with us, and you know various cuts to services as well, which are having an impact on the most vulnerable in society. So it's not an easy time to work in social work. It never is, but it's particularly difficult at the moment. And of course, here in Renfrewshire, we have the problems of high rates of suicide, high rates of alcohol and drugs. Although they have shown a slight decline in terms of number of deaths, it's still very prevalent out in Renfrewshire for us. Again, I would like to thank John, because his advice is always spot on. I've known John for a long time, and I'm delighted he's in his current role, and he performs that very well. But I think it's testament to him that he's paying tribute to the frontline staff, because they're the people who do it day in and day out and go beyond the call of duty at times to do extra work. So the only issue that I've got, and of course I don't want to go through it every single line, and you could do that. There's some really good stuff. There's some stuff that's maybe not so good, but they're all faced up very quickly. Slight negative, and I said this last year as well, the report's quite a bit out of date. and it's unfortunate we'll have to wait until September to get to the report. But I spoke to John about that on Monday, and I know there's trying to make sure we try and get it a wee bit earlier, because as we know in social work and indeed in life nowadays, things can move very, very quickly. So it'd be nice to have it a really up to date report. But thanks again to John, his team, and all the frontline staff who do the work on behalf of the community day in, day out. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McMillan. Councillor Graham Clark.
Thank you, Provost. Again, I'd like to thank our social care staff for their work in this particularly difficult time. I'm really aware of the number of mental illnesses and other social issues which the staff are addressing. I note page 56, you mentioned this, the high number of vacancies throughout the year, and I know that you're monitoring this. Can we have, after this meeting, clearer stats on this, the number of days lost and what the actual situation is? That would be helpful. And I'm delighted that there's this new support program for the university students, the younger people coming in, and that puts more stress on the limited number of senior staff. How sustainable is that? Is really my question there. I'm delighted we've got a new program and that seems to be working really well, but I'm just concerned that that's sustainable.
If you don't mind, Councillor Clark, I'll wait until Councillor McLaren's spoken in case he has more questions. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, have an informative report. Thank you, John. Page 54, halfway down, talks about community payback orders. They've increased from 369 in 2021-22, 450 in 22-23, and they're hoping to get up to the figure of 561 pre-COVID. Can I ask, are these figures the number of orders that have been able, that the council's been able to supervise, or the number issued by the courts? And how many community payback orders would we be able to meet as a council? Thank you.
Okay, if you don't mind, John, we've got Councillor Davidson who wants to come in. Caroline.
Yeah, thanks. Just very briefly, I welcome the report and I'm really pleased to see the positive preventative strategies that have been implemented across the services.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. Okay, I will ask John, you want to come in and address the questions?
Thanks, Provost. And Councillor Clark, yeah, we'll get you the vacancy information and it changes regularly, but we'll provide you with that update with the current position. In terms of the support programme, actually, this is one that I'm very proud of because it came from a number of our frontline senior social workers who actually developed the programme themselves. They recognised that the teams were facing challenges, so they had to think differently. They developed the programme, they've written the programme up, they've used newly qualified workers to influence it. So the programme is sustainable. It's a well-established programme now. It includes support groups, it includes recommended reading, it includes reflective time. So they've built that into the working day, and I think it will be sustainable and continued in the future. And because it was developed by the team who own it, then they're absolutely committed to delivering with the support of our training section. So it's quite good. Councillor McLaren, in terms of the number of community payback orders that are described in the report, these are the community payback orders with supervision requirements. So they are what would previously have been known as probation orders. So those are the probation orders that are made by the court. We are required to supervise all probation orders that are put in place by the courts. So at any given time, if there's a higher number, we have to amend and flex the type of programme that we offer. So you might have a group session organised to look at a particular issue, for example, gender-based violence, where there are more than one individual who's developing and showing that as a concerning behaviour. So we will flex that. In terms of the biggest challenge, unpaid work remains a challenge. I should have mentioned that. Unpaid work is separate from the community payback orders with supervision. We still try to ensure that all community payback orders are discharged immediately, so that someone who's made the subject goes into the programme within 5 days. that they actually have an induction in that period, and that we get them involved in programmes, whether that be in a group through one of the squads, or whether that be an individual placement. We've recruited a new manager, and we're trying to now get more individual placements to try and identify how do you show real recompense back to the community for offences. So in the past, the big programmes have been valuable. One, for example, in one of our primary schools where we rebuilt the playground that had been damaged in a fire. So we can do those kind of group programmes, but actually some of the individual programmes are much more effective, and that's one of our aims in the next 12 months to develop that area of work.
Okay. Okay, can we note the report then? Thank you, John. Next item on the agenda is item 7. That's the Renfrewshire Community Protection Chief Officers Group Annual Report 22 to 23. Do we have any questions? Councillor McMillan.
Aye, thanks very much. Quite a wide-ranging report, touches on a whole load of different subjects. I certainly liked the description of Renfrewshire and the fresh air and how lovely it is and all the rest of it. But there are parts like that, as we know, and I'm fortunate enough to live in one myself. But for a lot of people in Renfrewshire, that's far from the reality. Life can be tough for a lot of our communities, as we know. And again, referring back to what I was mentioned earlier on about cuts, there's no doubt that cuts both from Holyrood and from Westminster are having a devastating effect in the most vulnerable in our communities. I don't think we can argue with that one. We see it every single day in our communities. One of the issues I'm particularly concerned about is the life expectancy. That seems to have stalled. We always had a problem here in Renfrewshire. You know, in some areas, the gap between one place and another is really, really large. You know, can only be 2 or 3 miles of a distance. But the difference in those communities is stark. So that's worrying that the life expectancy has, as I say, has stalled. And as I mentioned earlier on, this draws a lot of parallel to John's report here. Drugs and alcohol deaths have thankfully went down a bit, which is great. Unfortunately, on the other hand, suicide rates in Renfrewshire seem to have bucked the trend and have went up, and that's of a particular problem, particularly amongst young men. It's when you see the figures as well about the number of adults and children of referrals of concern, 4,500, 4,123. These are huge, huge figures, and that's really got to be a worry to us all. And I know for the briefing I got on Monday, there's going to be an emphasis on care homes, which I understand that the IGB are looking at as well. There might be some major changes in care homes provision just over the horizon for us. But also in Renfrewshire, I just want to pay tribute to the people again, the people who have been dealing with Ukrainians that have been had to flee the terrible situation in their country, and some of them have found their way to our area. And of course, the asylum seekers that we've got based in this area as well. And I've said this plenty of times before, but it's worth pointing out again what the staff actually do to provide help and care for these poor souls is fantastic. So I'd just like to commend them. As I say, it's a huge ranging report, and one of the things that myself and I know Councillor Clark is particularly interested in is the lived experience forum. I've been fortunate enough to meet some of the people who are involved in that, and that's basically, that's where you learn. It's all very well us sitting around the table and us thinking how things are or thinking how things should be. These people are living it every single day, and to hear their experiences is, you know, I wouldn't say it's fantastic because you don't want to hear terrible experiences, but you know, it's a good learning experience for us. And again, just like to draw the attention, given to what I'd mentioned earlier on about the suicide at 614, there seems to be a new initiative to prevent suicide. So I would certainly welcome that. So as I say, it's a good report. As usual, a kind of mixed bag of really good stuff and some pretty grim stuff, but I would just like to thank the workers or the staff who are involved in all the terrific work that we managed to do here in Renfrewshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McMillan. I do know in relation to the life expectancy figures that it's a national issue. And we actually hit the news through the week, and I think experts are attributing that to a variety of factors, including the COVID pandemic. So I've got a few speakers who want in, and then I'll maybe ask Laura if she wants to come in and address any of the issues raised, Laura. I have Councillor Graham Clark.
Thank you, Provost. I'm really concerned that there's been an increase of 8 more suicides in Renfrewshire in 2022, up from 25 to 33. This when there was a total increase across Scotland of 9 in the same period. Every death is one too many and has terrible consequences for families and communities, as we know. Some of us have been in these situations with friends and others. And so I just wonder if it's possible for us to get some more demographic information about these suicides, and also if we could get a review of the strategies in redressing the issue just now, because obviously here in Renfrewshire it's a particular problem, and it would be good if we could just review what we're doing just now to address this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor James McLaren.
Thank you, Provost. Referring to paragraph 2.1, talks about population in Renfrewshire as 180,000. It'd be good to know, it says it's going to grow over the next 10 years. Do we have a prediction of how much it's going to grow? We've got a prediction of the number of households in 2028. What are the number of households that exist now? And over the page 2.6 talks about the beautiful green attractions that we have in Renfrewshire. Indeed, I have to agree with that, but I would have thought if populations and households are going to increase, some of that will be under threat. Next page, page 3.1, alcohol and drugs used by a child. It's good to see that that's coming down. On page 93, it mentions the alcohol and substance awareness education pack issued to teachers. What education do our children get on alcohol and substance abuse? And oh dear, well, there we go. On page 90, no, not on page 93. I've already referred to page 93, but in the report, I don't see any mention of vandalism. And in certain areas of Renfrewshire, I was at Bishopton Primary School for a visit recently, and anything that they try to do in their playground is constantly being vandalized. If there's little to do for children after school, vandalism seems to be rife. Sorry, just one moment, can't read my writing. It seems to, in some parts of Renfrewshire, vandalism is rife, and and it seems to be down to a lack of activities after school. I think it's something that we should be addressing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Davidson.
Thanks, Provost. Item 2.9, page 66, refers to more positive destinations. If we could have a bit more actual figures and what the rest of Renfrewshire doing better than the rest of Scotland, but if we could have some figures, that would be good. And it says we have to do more work with healthcare experienced people get a positive destination, which we obviously do. If I could maybe have some information about what work is being done. And in page 70, of the 77 missing people who are under the age of 20, could we maybe have some statistics on how many of these young people are care experienced as well, please? Thank you.
Yeah, some of the information, as I said earlier, might not be available today, Caroline, but obviously we'll ask Laura to get it to every councillor at some point after the meeting. If you just hold on a wee second, Laura, Councillor John Hood wants to...
Thank you very much. Page 93, the bullet point, mental health support for children. Is there is it a referral system? And if it's a referral system, what's the time limit for the referral system? As we know, like our CAMS is mostly under stress, and I was speaking to a constituent who has been waiting 2 years to be referred to CAMS. So are we along that sort of line? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoods. Hey, Laura. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Sorry. Councillor Adam. Laura.
Thank you, Provost. It's just with regards to Councillor Graham. We do have a new mental health strategy that's under constant review, Graham. If I can get you a copy of that sent over to you, Ian and I get it through the IGB. I'd also like to bring in Christine Laverty so she can tell you a bit more of what we're doing locally when it comes to it, because we actually just set up a new kind of steering group as well when it comes to mental health strategy, suicide prevention. Christine steers it and I sat on it last week. So if I can bring Christine in, she can tell you a bit more of what we're doing locally. But just to reassure you, Graham, we're very much focused on it. Okay.
Okay, we'll bring Christine in first if that's helpful. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Provost. So as Councillor says, that we have established a new strategic group to for the prevention of suicides. That is a requirement from the Scottish Government on the back of the Creating Hope Together policy, and that's the Scotland's prevention of suicide strategy 22 to 2032. So we have been asked to set up a strategic group working across all of our key partners within Renfrewshire. We have had our second meeting last week. It was really well attended, good level of commitment from Police Scotland, third sector organisations, Council and the HSCP. So the next step is we are currently working together around an action plan for Renfrewshire. We were all really saddened to see on the back of the quite significant drop in drug related deaths and alcohol related deaths within Renfrewshire that we had an increase in our probable suicide deaths, and we were saddened to see that. Unfortunately, probably not that big a surprise given the well documented information that's been out around the impact the pandemic has had on people's mental well-being and general mental health. So not something that we were completely not expecting, but every death is a tragedy. So there's a whole host of work already underway in terms of supporting people who've got concerns around their mental health, providing some training so that people and colleagues are more aware of what, some of the signs of when people are struggling and potentially contemplating suicide, and support obviously for the individual. So there is a lot of happening within Renfrewshire. You'll also be familiar with our recovery hub, which not only covers support for people who have drug and alcohol issues, but also people who are struggling with their mental health. And we know that that is certainly as part of the Scotland's policy, there is a big focus on support for people with living experience by people with lived experience around mental health, and that's absolutely the focus of the recovery hub. So there's a lot of activity. We're absolutely not complacent. What I would say is, although our numbers have increased, we are still, I think it's the sixth lowest numbers of death by probable suicide across Scotland. So that's maybe a little bit of comfort, but that strategic group is up and running. A lot of commitment from partners across Renfrewshire, and we will be doing our very best in reducing these tragic deaths.
Thank you very much, Christine. That was helpful. Laura, can I bring you in now?
Thanks, Provost. Good morning, councillors. A number of questions there, and as you mentioned, a number that I will have to confer with colleagues and share information after the meeting and some of the detail that's requested. In terms of the questions from yourself, Councillor McLaren, the paper does provide some of the information around population change. There have been recent updates, as you may be aware, in terms of population statistics through the publication of the census data, some of the initial outputs from that, which has confirmed that Renfrewshire's population has increased again to 183,800 which now makes us the 9th largest council area. So just to mention that. So there is a lot of work as some of that census data comes out for all of these groups to look at in terms of how our population is changing and how the requirements of our population are changing as well. So that's something that the groups that are mentioned within the report will be alert to, particularly around the increasing diversity of our communities. In terms of education around alcohol and drugs within schools, I'm happy to provide and linked with colleagues to provide some specific information in relation to that. You mentioned some of the materials that have been developed and funded through the Alcohol and Drugs Change Programme as a result of the Commission. There's always been support and information that's been provided across our schools to young people in relation to alcohol and drugs, but there was a recognition there was a need to continue to update and develop that. And recognition of the needs and how those are changing, and I suppose how prevalent alcohol and drugs is across our communities. And happy to confirm that the project is up for a national award this evening at the COSLA Awards, which is great for all the staff that have been involved in working on that particular initiative. In terms of your comments in relation to vandalism, you're right, Councillor, there are no specific statistics relating to vandalism. That's reported through the Police and Fire Scrutiny Committee, but happy to look into any specific instances and link those to the Youth Services team, just in relation to your point, recognising that where activities and I suppose support is available within communities that can help to reduce antisocial behaviour within communities themselves. Councillor Davison, just in relation to your 2 points in relation to missing people and destinations for care experienced young people, I'll link with services and provide you with some of the specific information that you've required. And Councillor Hood, also in relation to the referrals around mental health support, happy again to link with services to get that specific information that you require. But I appreciate there's a lot within this report and a lot of questions that are generated, so we'll make sure we'll follow those up and share them to members after the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. Councillor Airlie Nicholson.
It's really just a kind of comment more than anything else. I think it's stark when you look at any suicide figures, but quite often what we don't see is the number of suicides that have been prevented, people with suicide ideation, and nationally the kind of trend on that is upwards. So I think this credit needs to be given here in terms of the work that's done by the people who are involved in the prevention agenda here in terms of suicide, and we never really see that in reports because it's really hard to quantify. But I just thought it was worth mentioning. Thanks.
No, thank you for that contribution. Councillor Marie McGuire.
Thanks, Provost. Yeah. Thanks, Provost, and thanks, Councillor Airlie Nicholson, for your comment, because that was one of the issues suggestions I was going to say, that there is a lot of work in the community. With regards to some of the issues that some of the members have raised with regards to vandalism and youth service, the youth service team, when they're made aware of these issues and areas, will actually set up to go into that area and trying to improve it and find out what the issues are with the young people that's causing it. And there's some really good work getting done at the moment. So if you've got anything there, steer it to the services and they will absolutely help you there. Regarding the care to experienced children, the issues there are actually much improved, even though the figures are still relatively high. But there's been huge work with the police and our officers to make sure that that's there's a reduction in missing children, and that there's more intervention with the care experienced places to make sure that they get the support they needed to be able to assist these children. So there's actually vast improvements, but the figures are still high, but we're still working on it. Thank you.
Yeah, Laura, do we actually get like a Renfrewshire wide report from the police on issues such as vandalism and crime? I know we used to, but I'm not sure if we still do. Can you answer that, Marie? Yeah.
Through the Housing and Communities Board, we have a subcommittee, Police and Fire, and there's a report given into that every quarter when we have the report. Sometimes it's in arrears, but we do get updated information, and I can share that with all members.
Yeah, just be interesting to see what the trend is across Renfrewshire rather than in one area.
It has improved, but it's still you know, up there. But I'll share that with you all.
Thank you for that information. Okay, can we note the report, please? Thank you. Now, I'm going to break just now for, let's say, 15 minutes. Is that okay? And when we come back, we'll have the choir hopefully set up. Thank you very much. So back here at 15:15.